And I'm absolutely thrilled and honored to be here as well. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm excited because I get also to listen to so many other amazing speakers and join the workshops. And I know that I'm going to get an incredible chance to become more self-aware and to learn a whole lot of stuff. So thank you, Dejan, and the Life Coach Code team for putting this event together. It's an incredible event. And I'm really excited that I'm going to spend some time talking to everybody here about my favorite topic, which is limiting self-beliefs. And what I want to sort of start with is I want to really make sure everybody here understands how important it is to deal with these limiting self-beliefs. And Dejan has sort of already sort of led in beautifully with his sort of introduction. So I think we're all sitting here feeling that what we're doing here over the next 4 days is really important. But what I'm going to invite you to do is I sort of just to do a little visualization with me. And I want you to imagine, and sometimes it's easier if you close your eyes, if it's safe to do so, but I'll leave that to you. I just want you to imagine that you're on a lovely beach. The sun is shining, beautiful white sand. It's a lovely place to be. You can feel warm, you feel happy, and you look out to the sea. The sea is sort of beautiful, clear blue, gentle waves are lapping, and you decide it's time to go for a swim. So you leave all your stuff on the beach there and you go down to the edge of the sea and you walk into the water, and the water is warm, it's lovely, sort of like a tepid bath. It feels really nice. And just in case there's anybody doing this who at this point is thinking, I hate going into the sea because of all the creatures and the things, and I don't know what I'm going to tread on. Just imagine there's no creatures, there's nothing there. It's a safe place to be. The water is clear blue. You can see the bottom. It's all sandy. It's lovely. And you start to swim, and you're swimming along parallel with the beach, and you swim for maybe sort of 10, 12, 13 minutes and the waves are just gently bobbing, but it feels nice just to be swimming. When you've swum for a little while, then you stop, you put your feet down, and you just gaze back, you look back to the beach, and you'd expected that maybe you'd swum sort of 15, 20 meters at this point, but actually you've only swum maybe 6 or 7. You can still see all the things you left on the beach not that far behind you. And that's a little bit puzzling because you've been doing everything you need to swim efficiently in this lovely, gentle water. But what's actually happened here, what's at play, is that there's a current underneath the water, and that current is invisible, but it's pushing you back. It's stopping you from making progress. It's stopping you from moving forward, despite the fact that you're swimming perfectly competently. Forward movement is not happening as much as it needs to, as much as you want it to. And that's exactly what a limiting self-belief does. It's like an invisible rule, an invisible barrier, or an invisible force. And it's stopping you from moving forward in your life. It's keeping you more or less in the same place. And anybody who's ever cycled or is into running, you know how it feels when you're cycling or running and maybe the wind is blowing or there's rain and it's driving against you. It's really hard to make progress. That example is maybe a little more obvious because you can feel the force, you can feel the weather. But that's exactly what the limiting self-beliefs are doing. They're pushing against you. And you know, I'm a coach. I work with people, as Dejan said, and one of the main things that I do with people, regardless of what else we're working on, is to help them identify and eliminate their limiting self-beliefs. Because if I don't do that with them, then they can be setting goals, doing actions, working out what they want to move towards, but something will keep pushing them back. So it's one of the most important parts of the work that I do. And speaking personally, what kind of qualifies me to be sitting here with you is my own personal story. You know, if limiting self-beliefs were a gold, like an Olympic sport, I would definitely be a gold medal contender. Um, you know, my background is I grew up for most of my life with one parent, the other parent having already headed for the hills. So I was with this one parent, and it was my mother, and she had chronic alcohol problems because she also had psychological issues. So, to put it mildly, it wasn't a nice way to grow up. And, you know, we have a phrase in the UK about baggage. Well, trust me, when you have that kind of start in life, you certainly do come out of it with a certain amount of baggage, with some scars. I think that was the phrase that Dejan used, and that's absolutely right. But for some reason, I was also blessed with being pretty tough, with being strong inside of myself, and also being optimistic. And as soon as I could, in my mid-teens, I managed to get out of that situation. And I made a decision there and then that I was going to put that experience sort of into a box. I was going to put it in a box, put the lid on, and carry on living my life. And that's exactly what I did. And when I was in my 20s, I met my husband, and we're still married now. Trust me, we've been married a long time. That was some time ago now. Still happily married. And I had three boys, three wonderful, beautiful souls. I luckily found my working niche. I love software, love computers. And I ended up working on global IT projects. And if if anybody asked me at the time, was I happy? I would say, yes, yes, I'm happy. I've got a lovely family. I enjoy my work. It's challenging. It fulfills me. Every day's different, all those kind of things. But there was a slight hesitation in there. And as I go back to that time in my mind now, you can probably hear that in my voice. There's a hesitation there. And I kind of I was busy living my life. I was going to work, helping raise the family and all that kind of thing. Um, and what happened was when I got to my sort of late 40s, early 50s, the menopause hit me. And it had a huge impact. And at the time, it didn't feel good. But now I can look back and see that it was a gift. It really was a gift that enabled me to stop and to sort of look back and just rethink my life. Um, Working on global IT projects is very cyclical. You go through phases within the project, and it is a stressful world. And I prided myself on being tough and being able to cope. And I promised on myself as we went, sort of came out the other side of the stressful cycles, then yes, we'd be exhausted and we'd all sort of take a little time. Then the next cycle would start or the next project. And I always promised myself that I'd find a better way to do it. I'd find a better way to live. Um, well, when the menopause struck, I wasn't tough enough to cope anymore. And I realized that I had to do something. I had to find a way to live differently, basically, because if I didn't, I was going to basically ruin my physical and my mental health. And that's what I mean about it being a gift. You know, that whole sort of awareness that something had to change, and it was within me that it had to change. So it's at that point that my relationship with coaching started. And as a result of sort of finding out about coaching, I decided to retrain to be a coach. And I trained with the amazing Curly Martin, who was one of the first coaches in this country, an amazing lady. And I was honored that she wanted to sort of personally mentor me as well. So I worked with Curly and I did my training. And part of that training was her sitting us down. There were a whole bunch of us in the class at the time. She sat us all down and she said, what is the one thing that you believe about yourself that's going to stop you from being a successful coach and running your business? running a successful business and being able to help other people. And basically, I had to admit that it was simply that I didn't believe I was good enough to succeed. I didn't believe that people would take me seriously. And that was the start of me working on my limiting self-beliefs so that I could fulfill my purpose, to pick up on what Dejan was talking about. Now I have the privilege and the joy of waking up every day and just thinking, yes, now I'm living my best life. I've still got an amazing family, lovely friends, and all those things, but I'm living my best life. And even on the days when it's not easy, because just because it's my best life doesn't mean it's not stressful and it's not difficult at times. But I've got that sort of strength inside of me. My spirit is now golden. It's able to sort of expand and to flourish because I haven't got those limiting self-beliefs at play, pulling me down, pulling me back. Yeah. So I know from the inside that you can overcome your limiting self-beliefs. And what I want to say to everybody on this summit right now is that if you are willing to be honest, that yes, I have something at play here, something's holding me back. I have a limiting self-belief, or maybe more than one. But if you're willing to admit that, that is half of the battle. And while I'm with you today, I'm going to share some techniques, how you can identify them, how you can sort of eliminate them, all those things. I'm going to share all that stuff with you because I want you to have some concrete things that you can do and you can work on. And of course, we've got 4 days of experts and classes and all sorts of things. So you'll have lots of tools by the end of the summit. But what I also want to mention is that you don't have to write any of this down. Okay, I've got an ebook which I'm happy to share with everybody here. You can have a free copy, and the very first chapter is all about limiting self-beliefs. It's the biggest chapter in the book because, as far as I'm concerned, it's the most important bit of work that we all need to do in order to flourish, in order to have that feeling of oneness, for our spirit to soar, to really be golden. So the next thing that I want to do with you is I also want to say to you that you will already have experienced that. You will have had a moment, 2 moments or more in your life already when you felt that feeling of those limiting self-beliefs not playing out anymore. When just for that brief period in time, your confidence, your spirit, they're all connected. When you feel that power, that passion, that purpose inside of you. And what I just want to sort of ask you to do, and again, this sometimes does help if you close your eyes, if it's safe for you to do so, obviously, but just close your eyes and think back to the last time. Maybe it was when you woke up one day and the sun was shining in the window. You could hear the birds singing outside, maybe, or you could hear voices on the street, happy chattering. But you woke up that day and you felt strong. You felt amazing. You thought, yeah, I've got this today. Maybe you came home from work one day and you'd had a blindingly good day. The customers had all been nice to you. They complimented you, maybe. You know, your boss had said you were doing a fab job. You came home, you had a shower, and you thought, I feel really good today. Whatever the circumstances are, remember, doesn't matter whether it was 2 days, 2 years, or 5 years, but think about that time. Really bring it back into your memory. It's a good feeling. That's the day when you might say to yourself, this is the day I have a word with my partner about this thing that I need to talk to. I've been putting it off, but I can do it today. Yes, I'm not looking forward to it, and I've got that kind of slight feeling of what's going to happen, but I can do it today. Maybe it's the day when you ask your boss for a pay rise, you've been wanting to do it for a while, you could do it today. Maybe it's that day that you have a word with your friend, you're a bit worried about them, and you've been kind of waiting for the right moment to say something. Whatever it is, that's the day when you've got the power. So remember that time, remember how it felt, and put it in your memory banks, because that is a tool for you. When you have those days when you're not feeling quite so strong, when you need a help, access that memory, bring back that feeling, let it grow inside of you, because that's how I want you to feel. Let's be realistic, 80% of the time. And on the other days, you think it's okay because tomorrow I'm going to feel like that again. That's the power that you have within you if you can remove these limiting self-beliefs. So I hope now you kind of get a clue as to why it's so important that we deal with them. And what I'd like to start sort of before I actually go into helping you understand them and identify them in a bit more detail, what I'd like to just do is share a client story with you. So I'm going to call this client Denise. And Denise came to me, she was in her very early 50s, and she'd moved a couple of 100 miles across the UK. Her husband had taken early retirement. She was still wanting to work. They got settled in their new house, and she was at the point of wanting to apply for jobs. And the reason that she came to me was because nothing was resonating. She couldn't really see the next stage. She couldn't see what she wanted to apply for. Yes, she got all sorts of skills and there were jobs that she could apply for, but nothing was resonating. Nothing felt right. So in the very first coaching session that we had, as a coach, of course, we're always asking lots of questions, which helps our clients to sort of dig deeper and get some answers. So I started questioning Denise about her work and her skills, what she liked doing versus which bits of the work she'd done that maybe didn't resonate, she didn't enjoy quite so much. Then I asked her about what she did outside of work. And what I observed was that there was a pattern of overcommitting, of always being busy, of never having time to be just quiet and still and just put herself first. So I kept asking questions, and we got, luckily within that first session, I'll be honest, it doesn't always happen straight away in the first session, but we straight away got to the underlying reason for this. Denise's limiting belief was that she didn't believe she was good enough. She didn't believe she worked hard enough. She fundamentally believed she was lazy. So that explained the pattern of constantly maybe taking on jobs that demanded too much, didn't give her the work-life balance, all those things that had been uncovered. So in that first session, what I did with Denise was I did some NLP work. That's neuro-linguistic programming. And it's a fantastic way of sort of resetting, of kind of toning down the effect of that limiting self-belief. And Denise just sat there and started to cry. And I said to her, are you okay? Let's just take some time. And she said, I'm absolutely fine. She said, it's just the sheer relief of having that weight lifted. And in fact, we'd originally thought maybe she'd work with me for 6 sessions or even 8 sessions. She only needed 3 sessions, because once we'd put that limiting self-belief to bed, once we kind of pretty much eliminated it, she was free to kind of get on and live her life. And yes, I think the heaviest weight that you ever carry is the weight of your negative thoughts and your limiting self-beliefs. So I hope that story is kind of filling you all with hope and a passion to really get rid of your limiting self-beliefs. So what I want to do now is just have a little explore with you about, well, where do these come from? And we don't need to spend too much time on this, because fundamentally we've got them and we want to get rid of them, but it does help a little bit to understand. So they're typically formed when we're children, up to around the age of 7, and they stem from maybe painful or difficult experiences. It can simply be a teacher who, with the best of intentions, keeps telling you you're rubbish at maths, or you're lazy, or if you don't pull your ideas up, you'll never amount to anything. It can be, parents who were just always telling you you're lazy, going back to Denise's scenario. You never tidy up your room, you never help around the house, all those things. It can be things, your peer group, your friends, but difficult and painful experiences, things that just made you feel unhappy and uncomfortable inside. And then, sort of from the age of 7-ish onwards up to sort of early adulthood, we have more and more experiences. And what our subconscious is busy doing is categorizing all these experiences. And there's a lot of information every day, every second. 2 megabits of information or something is being processed by your subconscious every second. And it categorizes all this information. And it makes mistakes. It doesn't always get these things right because it doesn't think logically. The subconscious is there really just to keep you safe. So and I'm simplifying this a little bit, but if it decides, or if it's worked out that when you're the center of attention, if you're standing up in front of people or something, that causes you a lot of anxiety, it's going to kind of develop this limiting self-belief that is something that you just can't do. You don't do standing up in front of people. Maybe it's telling you that you're no good at maths. Maybe the limiting self-belief is that you're not, I don't know, healthy enough. You're not good looking enough. You don't feel that you're intelligent enough, don't feel that you're interesting enough. Maybe you don't feel like you deserve to be rewarded for the things that you've achieved, for the things that you've done, that you've never quite done enough. Whatever it is, as we grow up, those sort of limiting self-beliefs are formed. So by the time we get into adulthood, we've got these ideas about ourselves. And this is where the danger point is. The danger is that, yes, they limit us, but we also like them because we feel safe when we can say, yes, I know myself. I'm good at this. I can, support people. I can empathize. Couldn't say the word then. But don't ask me to stand up in front of people. Don't expect me to, manage a budget. I'm no good with numbers. I don't really believe I'm sort of good enough or pretty enough to be a TV presenter or something, but I can do this stuff behind the scenes. We like it, the rules give us security. We like to know ourselves. So in order to get rid of our limiting self-beliefs, we have to be willing to feel a little bit uncomfortable as well. And I'm sort of drawn back to one of my experiences, which is once I'd started training to be a coach, etc. My husband and we lived sort of just north of London, and we decided it was time for a change. So we made, within sort of 6 months, we sold the house, we upped sticks, and we moved sort of 200 miles from London to North Wales in the UK. And I remember that time, and I remember the feeling of being scared, but I also remember how exciting it was to think there aren't any rules anymore. It's a new place. I can reinvent myself. So when you start to kind of address your limiting self-beliefs, you have that moment of, I'm feeling uncomfortable. There are no rules anymore. Also think of the excitement of that. Think of the power of that, because it really is quite a heady feeling. It's an amazing feeling. So we've talked a little bit about where these limiting self-beliefs come from, how they're formed when we're kids, and we sort of they're reinforced by our experiences as we grow up. So what I want to sort of mention here is that, of course, we've got more than one limiting self-belief. It isn't, I'm afraid, it isn't just a one-shot job. You know, you don't just think, well, I'll do a bit of work for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then that thing's done. I can put it to one side and get on with living my life. I won't be limited anymore. It doesn't quite work like that. Um, it's about being vigilant. It's about looking out for these things, and I'm going to give you some tools and some things you can look for, some clues to help you find them. So there will be different ones. You'll have multiple ones. Some will play out in your life, and some won't. Some will matter maybe later on in another 10 years. Some maybe mattered 5 years ago, but they're not playing out anymore. So it's about thinking what's happening in my life at the moment? What's my priority right now? What is the limiting belief that is playing out in my life at this point in time? So always prioritize. Don't waste time on the things that aren't important. You know, like I probably don't believe I could actually ever get on the stage and sing a song. You wouldn't find me on kind of, what is it, Britain's Got Talent or something. I couldn't stand and juggle, but that doesn't matter, because frankly, that's never going to happen. So I can just leave that one alone. So think about the ones that are important and accept the fact that you've got quite a few, but they won't all play out. They won't all matter. So prioritize. That's the important thing. And remember, when you need the motivation, when it gets a little bit hard sometimes, and it feels a bit like you're trying to push water up a hill at odd moments, go back to that memory that I got you to access earlier. That memory where you felt that freedom, you felt what it's like when those limiting self-beliefs are not playing out in your life at that moment. That amazing feeling of power, of goldenness, where your spirit is completely connected, when nothing can stop you. Let that be your motivation. That's how you want to feel. So, how can we recognize these limiting self-beliefs? Well, I've got a few things, and I call them sort of opportunities, signals, and patterns. And I'm just going to say once again that all of this is in the ebook. I've got, exercises and all sorts of things. So you're all welcome to a free copy of that. If you want to write stuff down, that's great, but you don't need to be doing that right now. So opportunities. Think about things that you regret now, that opportunities you didn't take in the past. You have that thought, I wished I'd taken that promotion I was offered at work. I was too scared at the time. I didn't believe I could do it. Whatever the reason was. Maybe you had an opportunity to go traveling when you'd finished at university and you didn't do that. And now you've got the family, you've got the financial commitment. That moment has passed. Think about how enriching that experience would have been. Maybe relationships that you didn't pursue. It could be all sorts of things. Think of opportunities that you didn't take, decisions you made that you now regret. And, I've got a kind of a light-hearted example, but even the light-hearted examples will tell you something. They'll give you a clue as to what's going on in your psyche underneath. I'm into horses. And in my 20s, I went to a demo somewhere, and we watched this lovely dressage rider riding this beautiful horse. And I had the opportunity to go and get on that horse and ride that horse. And I didn't do it. And I will always regret that, because even if an opportunity came along now, I'm, kind of considerably older. I'm a bit stiffer, not so fit, etc. So I wouldn't be able to ride the horse in the way that I could when I was young, when I was in my 20s. But I always regret that. I wished I'd done it. But at the time, I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be visible. I didn't want to risk not being good enough. So even the light-hearted examples will tell you something. So just take a moment now, maybe, in your mind and think, what are the things I regret? What Dejan was talking about earlier, is kind of imagining that you're getting to the end of your life. And, You trust me, as you get older, the opportunities become less and less in some ways. So what might you feel regret for? That will give you a clue. So another thing to think about is signals. And what I mean by that is your body will tell you when something is playing out. And once I'd actually started my coaching business, I decided that I wanted to do some Facebook ads. Now, bearing in mind that, software and IT and stuff is my thing, and I'm good at software. I can sit down in front of a new piece of software and I can learn it really quickly. And I love doing it as well. It's a bit sad, isn't it, really? But I love doing that. So I decided I'd get somebody to help do the ad design, but I would do the whole Facebook campaign setup myself. And thank you for that question, and I will come back to that shortly. So thank you for that. I will address that shortly. So I spent, and I'm quite embarrassed about this, I spent 6 weeks trying to set up this campaign in Facebook. I'd go in several times a day. 5, 6 weeks later, I was no further forward. All I gained was this awful feeling of being sick, of actually feeling physically sick at the prospect of doing it. And basically my body was shouting at me to pay attention, to pick up on the signals. The signal was, this is holding you back. You are keeping yourself stuck. So, I finally realized, and again, that huge weight lifted off me. I felt this enormous sense of relief. So yes, I got somebody to help me and show me how to do it, but I wasted 6 weeks, So you will all have something that your body, somewhere, if you like, it was better way to phrase it, somewhere in your body. Maybe you always get headaches when things get stressy, or when there's something at play under the surface, when you're feeling stuck, stressed, tense, anxious, whatever it is. Maybe, like me, you get it in your stomach. Maybe your back plays up, you get tight round your back. But just be vigilant. That's the word. Just keep looking out for those signs, and then stop and think, hang on a minute, like I did eventually, what's going on here? So your body will try to communicate with you. So that's an important thing to. So we've got the opportunities, the decisions we've made, we've got the signals, and we've also got the pattern. Thank you, Jamie, for that. Yeah, an embarrassing great story, but yeah, it does emphasize the point. So we've also got the patterns. Think about things that happen regularly, things maybe that you do regularly, or things that you don't do regularly, thoughts that you have, repeated things. So again, over the years, I've always, whenever anybody invites me to a party, I kind of get this incredible feeling of tension in my chest. And my first thought is always, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And I immediately start looking for excuses not to go, because I don't want to hurt the other person's feelings either. But I find that whole big party, not small parties, but big party thing, really stressful. But I know that. And now I can look out for that pattern, and I can kind of dig and say, well, what's the reason for this? What's going on underneath? And now I can recognize that pattern, and I can say, yeah, but when you get there, you'll have a good time. And I can kind of get through that. But there will be things, repeated patterns, maybe, I don't know, at family parties, there's always certain things that trigger you. Maybe there's a certain person that you connect with regularly in meetings at work. I had this once. There was a particular person in the meetings at work. He was very, very vocal. He had good ideas. He knew his stuff, but I always felt like I shrunk when I was around him. and I could examine that and I could work out what was going on. So think about things that happen, patterns of that feeling of stress, being uncomfortable. It's all about being vigilant. Okay. So that takes us on to the next stage. Okay, so you've got some ideas about how you can find these things. And I will say that that's one of the benefits sometimes of working with a coach. If you know there's something at play, or it doesn't even have to be a coach, maybe you've got a really insightful best buddy and you can just say, I can't figure out what's going on, and they'll help you. Maybe you find a good podcast and somebody will give you a clue, but sometimes the answer comes from outside a little bit as well. Sometimes we all need help. I certainly needed help because my limiting self-beliefs were really deep-seated. But once you've uncovered them, then yes, the next stage is, how do we overcome them? What can we do about them? And this is where I'm going to pick up, and thank you again for this question, which is, what do I do if I'm too scared to go against my belief? And sometimes the answer is that you maybe need help from somebody outside. One of the things that I can explore with my clients is, once we've uncovered something, is to think, what's the worst? What's the worst case? So actually facing it head on. What is it that you're scared about? What would happen if you did something, if you stood up, metaphorically speaking, put your hand up, said something in a meeting, and people went, no, we don't agree with that. What's the worst that would happen? What's the worst that can happen if you stand up and you say to somebody in your family, no, I'm not up for doing that. That I'm not comfortable with that and I don't want to do that. What's the worst that's going to happen? So sometimes that really helps. But what I wanted to share with you is some techniques you can employ that you can put into action yourself. And one of the really good things, and this might answer your question a little bit, is just start thinking positively. And even if it doesn't resonate inside straight away, that's fine. It doesn't matter. What we're doing here is we're retraining our subconscious. We're saying to our subconscious, thank you for your concern, but this isn't a problem. And by the way, I always speak nicely to my subconscious because it is doing its best and it's trying to keep me safe. Yeah. So if, for example, taking a simple example, which is I'm rubbish at maths, if that's your limiting self-belief, turn it into a positive phrase. So I am great at maths. And it doesn't matter if you don't really believe it deep inside at that point. In a coaching session, I will say to a client, right, come up with a positive version now. And they'll say it. I'm good at maths. I'll say, okay, now say it like you mean it. Really, as we would say in the UK, give it some welly, give it some energy. Okay, I'm good at maths. No, more energy. Okay, I'm great at maths. And by this time, they're so annoyed with me, get that extra level of energy because I keep going on at them. You remember that phrase and you remember how you felt inside when you said it. And then what you commit to doing, and this is something that would really help you, like the person who asked the question, you find a time 3, 4, 5 times a day. There's a trigger point. Maybe you get in the car, you drive a lot. Every time you get in the car, you click your seatbelt. That's when you repeat that positive phrase 3 or 4 times. For me, because I work at home, it's when I go down, and I'm British as well, so I'm always making tea. It's when I go down to the kitchen and I switch the kettle on. That's my trigger. While I'm waiting for the kettle to boil, whatever I happen to be working on at the time, I will repeat that phrase 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I've got post-it notes around my desk, in my sock drawer, that kind of thing. You have to retrain your subconscious. It takes commitment. It could take weeks. It could take, even a few months, but you keep repeating it like you mean it. And you know what will happen? One day you'll say it and you'll think, good heavens, I meant it that time. I felt it. It was my truth. So that's going to help you get through it. So that's one technique. Come up with that positive phrase. Yeah. And the other thing, of course, to back that up is you might want to do a little extra learning. If you're nervous about standing up in front of people, join a public speaking group. If you think you're not good at maths, take a course. It doesn't mean you're not practically building on these skills that you don't think you have. You know, if you're nervous about networking and you believe you're not good at going to networking events, if you're running your own business, you know, find a place where you can go practice. So that's one thing. Another thing that you can do, and one of the best things, is taking action. And again, this comes back to that question, what do I do if I'm really scared? You start taking action, but you start with very small steps. So if your limiting self-belief is kind of ties into not being visible, shall we say, taking the meeting scenario at work, yeah, you make a vow that maybe once a week in one meeting for the next month, you will say something, but you pick something small that isn't a big topic. Just express a small opinion. Just do it once. Be willing to be uncomfortable. Yeah, but don't expect yourself to stand up and make a speech. Be realistic. Start with small steps. Do it once a week. When you've done it 2 or 3 times, then you'll realize, actually, that wasn't so bad. Maybe your limiting self-belief stops you setting boundaries and you don't like to say at 5 o'clock, 5:30, right, I'm off now, see you tomorrow. You have this kind of thing that you have to stay and prove something. You stay till 6 every night. One day a week, you just say, right, I'm off now. And you'll feel uncomfortable and it won't feel nice. But when you've done it, it will feel amazing. So start with small steps, take action, plan what you're going to do and do it. Don't let yourself kind of backtrack, make excuses, but don't overface yourself. And then the last thing I was going to mention as an idea for you is write down the case. Prove to yourself that it's not true. So if we take the math scenario again, let's say you sit down with a pad and pen and you write down, of course I'm good at maths. You know, I deal with a £2 million project budget at work. When the interest rates change, I can instantly work out what the impact is on my monthly mortgage payments. Build up a case and write it down. Yeah. Anybody who's into journaling, you can build it into your journaling as well. And you know, I'm in the process at the moment of writing a book, and I'm in a coaching group for writing a book. And believe me, I've got limiting self-beliefs at play there. We did a writing exercise where we just wrote down all those things that were in our head. Well, what have I got to say? Who's going to want to read my book? So we did a 5-minute writing exercise, and I'll tell you what, it was amazing. Just getting it down on paper, just being able to empty your head of those things. It really helps. So there's 3 tips and techniques.